Now, ever since the Democratic primaries, Hillary Clinton's been tiptoeing around Obamacare, but former President Bill Clinton is really turning up the heat on Mr. Obama's signature law. Take a look at this.
They're not organized, they don't have any bargaining power with insurance companies, and they're getting whacked. So you've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
You think there would be more coverage of that, but since the dominant media culture is in the tank for Hillary, and we're not the media, we're Newsmax TV, we're going to talk about it. And to do so, we welcome in Newsmax health editor Nick Tate. Nick, of course, the author of Da Vinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. There you see it. Boomers like us, well, he knows it intimately. He wrote the book. I got to read it to get things straight as the years pass. But something baby boomers and others are having problems with, Nick, this collapse of Obamacare, and in a key swing state like North Carolina, what, more than 250,000 people?
That's right.
Are losing their health insurance there?
It's not just North Carolina. There's a new study out this week from Bloomberg that says that 1.4 million Americans will lose their health insurance next year because Aetna, United Healthcare, and other regional insurers are pulling out of Obamacare. Now, this not only means that folks are going to have to find other alternatives, but those alternatives are going to offer them fewer choices, are likely to cost more money, and the likelihood is that their doctors and their healthcare, their hospitals are not going to be on those healthcare plans. Remember when the president promised, if you like your healthcare, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. Well, here's a textbook example of why that proves not to be true.
And so we've got Obamacare collapsing. And I would believe there are two very different responses. Mr. Trump would absolutely shut it down. Hillary would go to the much feared single payer system a la Canada.
They've both said that. That's what we can expect. With Hillary Clinton, we're going to get more of the same. She will expand Medicare to include people 55 and older and largely keep in place what's there. She's also talked about adding to Obamacare for the people who can get to those exchanges. The 12 million undocumented immigrants in this country who now are not legal residents, she would like to see health care expanded to them through Obamacare as well. So if we do go to that single payer system, the estimates are it would be something like $18 trillion to implement it. So, you know, as we say, there's no free lunch. Promises, promises, but we're going to end up paying a lot more if, in fact, she accomplishes her goals.
And, of course, for all intents and purposes, right now, illegals are signing up for Obamacare, the very thing that President Obama said would never happen and that Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina was assailed for during a State of the Union speech a while back. Now, something that had some impact at the Hayworth Hacienda with a college student, Breitbart reports this, but families are feeling it in their budgets. Congress is indirectly taxing students by having Obamacare siphon off 69% of student loan profits, about $8.7 billion a year.
Yeah, what's happening here is the 2,500-page law, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is just so laden with little goodies and little nuggets. One of them is what amounts to a federal takeover of the student loan program, which now accounts for about almost 40% of all assets collected by the federal government. And of course, those assets are used to fund Obamacare. So by some estimates, they're taking as much as 70% of that money and putting it toward Obamacare to pay for the subsidies, implement the program. So in a kind of indirect way, not only are the young people who have to buy their own insurance, who often don't need tremendous insurance because they're a healthy population, not only they're going to have to pay for it or pay a fine, they're also paying these higher student loan costs, which by some estimates are adding thousands of dollars at higher levels of taxes to pay for those programs that are going to Obamacare. Why didn't we hear more about this before is really a good question, but with a law as detailed as this with so many specifics, it's one of those things that kind of snuck by.
There was so much in this is why when I was campaigning for the U.S. Senate in 2010, if these conservatives who talked so tough would have gone to the floor and made the clerk of the Senate read the 2,500 pages over Christmas time, people could have heard what was in the bill. Now, it would have been camouflaged by legal mumbo jumbo, legislative ease, but the case could have been made, but everybody wanted to go home for Christmas. So ho, 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 Merry Christmas 2009. We got stuck with Obamacare, and it is absolutely horrific. I would just offer a friendly amendment. Rather than nuggets or goodies, I call them public policy landmines. and really, for kids in school and for families trying to pay student loans, this is an outrage because, you know, if the government were operating as a bank, these rates they're jacking up, they would probably be hauled in for usury, for jacking up interest rates, but this is sadly legal theft for a program that is unsustainable.
In fact, this is a textbook example, in my opinion, of what happens when the federal government takes over a private enterprise. These loans were made by lending institutions and banks for years. And yeah, there were high default rates, but now there's something like the number I was looking at today is crazy. 29% of student loans default, students default because they just can't pay back the loans, and this has got to be one of those reasons.
Well, there is something else going on, and that is overcharging in the pharmaceutical industry, price gouging. EpiPens, for what, Mylan? It was $94 in 2007 to $608 this year. The CEO of Mylan testified up on Capitol Hill. Let's look and listen to those comments.
Have you ever seen a mother cry because she can't afford the medication for her child? Well, the reason I ask you this, Ms. Brescia, is because I've experienced it. I've seen this. I've seen a mother go out and have to call family members to see if she can get the money together to try and see if she can pay for this medication that she knows her child has to have. I've witnessed that firsthand.
So, you have that situation. I've got my own sneaking suspicion about what's going on here, but what is the official reason for this increase in cost?
Well, one of the big problems with Obamacare is called the Affordable Care Act, but it's a complete misnomer. There's nothing that does anything to boost competition, to give consumers more choice, or to expand opportunities which allow people to pay lower costs. That's the big failing. But we've seen it with EpiPen, up 500% costs since 2009. Insulin rates have tripled in just the last 3 years. Cancer drugs are up now. A typical cancer patient pays about $58,000 a year out of pocket after insurance for drug costs alone. And hospitals just this week said that their drug costs are have gone up by 23%. And you know who pays the price for those things? That's us. What's happening is drug companies are allowed to charge essentially whatever they want without a lot of supervision, without a lot of oversight, and very little transparency.
And the problem is, it is the government. Like Ronald Reagan said years ago, we're from the government and we're here to help. The most dangerous phrase in the lexicon of our language, because rather than helping, you take away the dynamics of the market, you take away competition, and what you have is legalized theft from what in essence becomes a government-controlled top-to-bottom system. It is hazardous to our health. Nick Tate, Newsmax health editor, thanks very much for the update. It's a bitter pill to swallow, pun intended, and we thank you very much. When we come back, a look at Today in History, plus our prime preview with Miranda Kahn, and more of your phone calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. We want to hear from you. It's America Talks Live.